Elara's world was darkness, not the soft kind that blankets the night, nor the comforting shadow that hides the forest. No, this darkness was cold, hard, and suffocating, pressing against her skin, settling into her bones. She had lived beneath the dais of her family's grand hall for as long as she could remember, chained by both iron and dark magic. The chains were etched with runes that glimmered faintly, pulsing with a slow, ominous rhythm, as if alive. Every day, she counted the moments by their glow, wondering how many more sunrises, or what passed for sunrises, in her dim chamber, she would survive. Her parents' faces floated in her memory like carved statues, stern and unyielding. She remembered her mother's cold blue eyes, sharp as winter ice, and her father's voice, low and controlled, warning her that she carried a curse. "You are meant for danger, Elara," he had said once, when she was still too young to understand the weight of the words. "One wrong step, and everything you touch will burn." And so they had chained her, beneath the dais where the warmth of life above never reached, leaving only echoes of the court's laughter and music to remind her of a world she could never touch. Elara had learned to survive in the silence. She whispered to the shadows, tracing the cracks in the stone walls with her fingers, speaking to herself when fear became too heavy. She imagined stories of knights and rebels, of battles fought in moonlight, of someone brave enough to defy kings and queens for love and justice. But most of all, she imagined freedom. A place where she could run, unchained, and breathe without the weight of magic pressing on her chest. Yet there was one whisper in the back of her mind, one she did not dare believe fully. The prophecy. It was fragmented, heard in hushed tones from servants who brought her bread through the secret passage. A rogue alpha will break her chains, or doom her forever, they had whispered, as if speaking it aloud could make the words vanish. Elara had no idea what it meant, rogue, alpha, broken chains, but her heart fluttered at the thought. Could someone really come for her? Could someone really care enough to defy her parents, their guards, and the magic itself? Far beyond the palace walls, in the dark forests of the northern lands, Kael moved like a shadow. The rogue alpha was a name spoken in fear and awe across the kingdoms. Stories said he could tear through a battalion alone, that no magic could hold him, that no chain could bind him. Kael did not seek fame or power. He was driven by instinct, by a force he did not fully understand. And for reasons he could not name, he felt pulled toward a destiny entwined with a maiden trapped by prophecy. The forest around him whispered in warning. Trees bent as if bowing, roots shifting underfoot, sensing his presence. Even the wind seemed to murmur his name. Kael's eyes, dark and piercing, scanned the horizon. He had felt this pull before, a twinge in his mind, a whisper in his soul, and now it had grown louder. It led him north, to the heart of a palace where shadows moved differently, where magic throbbed beneath stone floors like a heartbeat. Back in her chamber, Elara pressed her face against the cold stone. The chains at her wrists were heavier than ever today, buzzing faintly, as though warning her of something approaching. She did not dare hope, yet her chest tightened with anticipation. Something was coming. She could feel it in the air, in the vibration of the floor, in the unnatural stillness around her. Her mind wandered to dreams of freedom. She imagined running through halls bathed in sunlight, the cold chains falling to the floor with a clatter that echoed like music. She imagined stepping outside the palace, smelling the fresh air of the forest, feeling wind on her face, sunlight on her hair. But every time the thought came, the weight of her reality returned, dragging her back into the shadowed chamber. Then the sound came. Faint at first, a step that did not belong to the palace guards. Elara froze, holding her breath, straining to hear. It was deliberate, steady, confident. Each footfall resonated in the stone, a rhythm that matched the pulsing glow of her chains. Her pulse quickened. The prophecy. Could it be him? Could the rogue alpha actually be here? Kael moved through the corridors with precision. He knew the guards would be numerous, but he had faced worse. He had faced hunters whose arrows never missed, wizards whose spells could turn men into stone. And yet this mission felt different. Something about this place, about the magic that clung to it, made the air electric. It hummed beneath his skin, tugging at him like a chain he could not resist, and somewhere in the silence, he felt the faintest echo of a heartbeat, a fragile, frightened rhythm that called to him. Ilara's fingers trembled as the footsteps drew closer. She wanted to call out, to cry for help, but fear and disbelief clamped her voice. What if it was not him? What if it was another trap, another cruel joke by her parents? But the closer the sound came, the more her hope took root. She dared a small thought. Maybe, just maybe, she would not be chained forever. Kale stopped outside the chamber. He sensed the magic immediately. A dark, protective force meant to bind, to suppress, to control. He smirked slightly, brushing dirt from his leather armor. Chains, he muttered. Let's see if you can hold me. With a single gesture, he extended his hand, releasing a pulse of energy that made the runes on the chains flare. Ilara gasped as the chains quivered, glowing brighter than ever. The magic screamed against him, thrashing with resistance. She had never seen anything like it, stronger than iron, older than the palace itself. Yet Kale's presence was like a flame in the cold, and slowly, the chains began to yield. The ground shook slightly, and the walls echoed with the sound of metal breaking. Ilara's heart raced as the final chain fell to the floor with a resounding clang. She stared at the figure before her, cloaked in shadows, tall and commanding, yet strangely protective. His dark eyes met hers, and in that instant, she saw not a monster, not a threat, but a being who had come for her, as the whispers had promised. But relief did not last. From the hall above, a sudden shout rang out, echoing through the stone corridors. The guards had been alerted. The sound of armored footsteps, the clang of swords, the barked orders they were coming. Kale's eyes darkened. Stay close, he murmured, his voice a low growl that sent shivers through her. He moved toward her with lethal grace. But the warning in his gaze told her this would not be easy. The power of her parents, the magic of the chains, and the wrath of the palace guards, all of it was closing in. Ilara swallowed hard, her fingers brushing the cold metal of the broken chains. She wanted to run, to escape, but fear twisted in her stomach. Yet beneath the fear, a spark of something else bloomed, something dangerous and beautiful. Hope that she would finally breathe, finally live, finally be free. The footsteps drew nearer, faster, louder. Shadows stretched along the walls as the guards approached the hidden chamber. Kale stepped in front of her, his presence a shield, a promise, a warning all at once. His hand rested lightly on the hilt of his blade, ready to defend, to fight, to kill if necessary. Ilara's breath came in shallow gasps. She looked at him, this rogue alpha, this man who had broken the chains that had bound her for so long. There was a tension between them, an electric pull that made her pulse thunder in her chest. She didn't understand it, and perhaps she never would, but she knew, deep inside, that nothing would ever be the same again. And then, the walls shook. A figure appeared at the threshold of the chamber, a tall, imposing guard, bearing the family crest, eyes filled with fury. Behind him, more shapes emerged, their weapons glinting in the dim light. The room felt impossibly small, yet impossibly heavy with the weight of impending confrontation. Kale's jaw tightened. Hold on, he whispered to Ilara. They won't take you back. Not while I breathe. Ilara clutched the edge of the dais, her heart pounding. She felt the heat of fear, the thrill of danger, and the stirrings of something she had never known. A strange, trembling anticipation for the moment her world would change forever. The first guard stepped forward, sword raised. Kale's blade was already drawn, reflecting the faint glow of the broken chains. The air crackled with tension, magic, and the promise of a battle that would decide everything. Ilara's eyes met Kale's one last time before the clash began, and in that instant, she understood something profound. She was no longer alone. The rogue alpha had come, just as the whispers had promised, but whether this night would bring freedom or death, she could not yet know. The chamber held its breath. The first swing of steel met resistance, and the fight for Ilara's life and for her heart had begun. Cliffhanger. The chains that had bound her for years lay shattered on the cold stone floor, but their magic still lingered in the air, thrumming with a dark, unpredictable power, and somewhere in the shadows, a new force stirred, drawn by the broken prophecy. The clash of steel echoed through the shadowed chamber, ringing against the cold stone walls. Ilara's heart pounded as Kale moved with deadly precision, every swing of his blade a testament to his power. The guards, though numerous, faltered before him, their confidence cracking like brittle wood. Ilara had never seen such force, such focus. And yet beneath the danger, she felt a strange stirring of something unfamiliar hope, and a strange, thrilling connection to this man who had come to her rescue. Kale's eyes never left hers as he fought. Each motion was fluid, almost dance-like. But there was a warning in his gaze, a silent demand. Stay behind him. Trust him completely. Ilara swallowed hard, her fingers brushing the floor, searching for leverage, any way to help. The chains on her wrists were broken, but their magic lingered, humming faintly in the air like a warning. She could feel it reacting to Kale's presence, as though the power within her still pulsed, waiting to be awakened. The guards lunged again, shouting orders. But Kale's movements were swift, almost preternatural. He parried, struck, and moved like a storm contained within a single, disciplined form. Ilara watched, her fear mingling with admiration, and for a moment, she almost forgot the danger. Then, a strange ripple passed through the chamber. The runes on the broken chains flared, brighter than before, and a low, resonant hum filled the air. The guards froze mid-step, unease rippling across their faces. Ilara's breath caught, the magic of the chains. It was not gone. It was alive, reacting to Kale's energy, or perhaps to her own. Stay close. Kale barked, noticing the change. His blade swept in a wide arc, sending the nearest guard sprawling. It's not just them. Something else is here. Ilara's eyes widened. She felt it too, a presence, dark and heavy, like a shadow moving just beyond the edges of vision. The air grew colder, the stone walls pressing in as if the chamber itself had become a living thing. Magic, raw and uncontrolled, surged around them. Without a word, Kale grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a narrow side passage barely visible in the dim light. "This way," he said. His voice was low, urgent, but there was a softness in it, a subtle reassurance that she could cling to. Ilara followed, her heart hammering not only with fear, but with the strange thrill of being near him. They emerged into a hidden corridor, lined with torches that flickered weakly. Dust motes danced in the pale light, and the walls bore old carvings, worn by centuries. Kale kept his senses alert, listening, watching, feeling the magic that clung to Ilara, like a second skin. "The chains," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "They're stronger than I imagined. And they're calling something. Something old." Ilara shivered, her fingers still brushing against the fading glow on her wrists. "What is it?" she whispered, voice barely audible. Kale's eyes softened briefly, and he gave her hand a firm squeeze. "A force tied to your family. It's protective, but also dangerous. We need to move before it decides we're threats." The corridor opened into the castle's underbelly, a labyrinth of cold stone passages, forgotten chambers, and echoing halls where shadows lingered long after footsteps had passed. Kale led the way with surety, weaving through the maze as if he had walked it many times before. Ilara struggled to keep up, her legs weak from years of confinement, her lungs burning as she tried to keep pace. As they moved, Kale spoke, though cautiously, as if revealing too much might draw unwanted attention. "You must understand," he said, voice low, almost confessional. "I am not a hero. I am what the world fears. I live in shadows, hunt in darkness, and trust few. But something about you, I cannot leave you chained." Alara's pulse quickened. She had spent her life hearing fear in her parents' voices, but never this, never someone speaking not just to her, but for her, risking themselves for her. Her chest tightened in a way she could not name. Was this gratitude? Relief? Or something more dangerous? Something that had no place in a dark, cruel world? They reached an arched doorway that led into a hidden courtyard, overgrown with weeds and vines. Moonlight spilled through gaps in the crumbling stone roof, casting silver shadows across the broken fountain at its center. Alara inhaled sharply. The air was cool, scented faintly with earth and rain. Freedom felt closer than it had ever been. Kale stopped in the center of the courtyard, glancing toward the palace. "We're not safe yet," he said, tension tightening his jaw. "They'll come. They always do." Alara nodded, though fear still gripped her. I can feel the chains still," she admitted. "Even though they're broken. The magic. It's like it's inside me." Kale studied her carefully. "That's why they chained you," he said quietly. "Not to punish you, but to control the power within. And it's awakening now. You need to learn to wield it, or it could destroy more than just your enemies." She looked down at her hands, trembling. For years, she had felt useless, weak, imprisoned. Now she realized something terrifying and exhilarating. She might be stronger than she ever knew. Strong enough to fight, to escape, to change her fate. But the thought was also heavy. She did not know how to control it. The wind stirred, rustling leaves and carrying a distant, haunting sound, a horn, echoing through the hills beyond the palace. Kale's eyes narrowed. "They've called reinforcements," he said. "The palace guards are trained." "Yes. But this is bigger. Someone wants you back. Badly." Alara's stomach tightened. She had imagined freedom, but never a world so dangerous, so alive with forces beyond her understanding. She clutched Kale's arm instinctively. I don't know if I can." Kale shook his head, his grip firm and unyielding. "You can. You must. You survived chains for years. You can survive this. And I will not let them take you back." A rustling sound drew their attention. Shadows moved along the edges of the courtyard, figures draped in dark cloaks, eyes glowing faintly with unnatural light. Kyle stepped in front of Alara, blade in hand, and instinctively she felt the magnetic pull of his presence, as if he alone could anchor her in this storm of fear and magic. The figures circled them slowly, deliberately, whispering in a language that made the air shimmer. Alara felt the magic of her chains stir once more, pulsing in response to their words, reacting to the danger. The power that had been a curse in her childhood now hinted at promise, a force that could protect her if she could learn to command it. Kale's eyes met hers. "Ready?" he asked. His voice was a mixture of warning and encouragement, a thread of warmth in the cold night. Alara nodded. Though uncertainty tightened her chest, she had never wielded power like this. Never fought with purpose beyond survival. But now, she had no choice. She would fight not just for herself, but for the rogue who had come to save her. The figures advanced, their forms blurring as the moonlight hit them, shadows stretching unnaturally. Kale moved like liquid, striking with precision and grace, while Alara instinctively raised her hands. The energy within her, the magic of the broken chains, responded, creating a shield of light that pushed the shadows back. She gasped at the force, startled at her own strength. "Keep going," Kale shouted, spinning to deflect an attack aimed at her. "Don't stop now." Alara's fear burned into determination. She focused, letting the magic flow, feeling it pulse through her veins like a wild river. The shadows hissed and recoiled, their forms flickering as if uncertain how to proceed. She had never imagined herself capable of this. Yet here she was, alive and powerful, standing beside Kale as equal in the face of danger. The night seemed endless. The courtyard a battlefield of shadow and light. And then, just as the figures began to falter, a deafening roar shook the forest beyond the walls. The ground trembled. The trees bent, as if under a massive force, and a chill ran down Alara's spine. Kale's eyes widened. "This isn't just palace guards," he said, voice low, tense. "Something else is coming. Something older than this castle. Older than the magic that held you." Alara's heart raced. She had thought the chains were her only danger, the palace guards her only enemies, but now the world itself seemed to rise against her, pulling her into a darkness that threatened to consume everything. Kale grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a secret path that led deeper into the forest. "Hold on," he said, eyes blazing. "We're not done. Not by far." Alara's fingers tightened around his. For the first time, fear was mingled with something new, trust, hope, and a spark of something she could not yet name. They were running, yes, but together, and in that union, in the heartbeat of survival and power, she felt alive in a way she had never imagined, beneath the cold chains of the Dais. Cliffhanger. The shadows retreated, but the roar from the forest grew louder, closer, carrying with it a force that neither Alara nor Kale had ever faced before. A storm of magic, power, and destiny was coming for them, and they would have to face it together, or be torn apart forever. The forest swallowed them whole. Moonlight trickled through the dense canopy, casting silver patterns across twisted roots and moss-covered stones. Every step Alara took was cautious, her bare feet brushing against damp earth, her breath shallow from both exertion and the thrill of freedom. The air was alive with sounds she had never known, distant howls, rustling leaves, and the low hum of magic that thrummed beneath the ground like a heartbeat. Kyle led the way, moving with the fluidity of a predator, silent but watchful. His eyes scanned the shadows, alert to every movement, every whisper of the wind. Ilara's hand was clenched in his, a tether between them, but it also gave her courage she had never felt before. She was no longer a prisoner beneath the dais, she was alive, and she had a chance to fight. Yet danger was not far behind. The forest itself seemed aware of her presence, the pulse of the broken chains within her, reacting to the power that lingered in the shadows. Strange shapes shifted among the trees, elongated figures that moved with unnatural grace. Alara felt the magic stir inside her, responding to them, awakening like a wild creature unchained for the first time. "Stay close," Kale murmured, his voice low, almost a growl. "They're not just after you, they're after your power. And that roar from before? It's a creature older than anything in the forest. Something ancient. Something that knows you're here." Alara's pulse quickened. She had imagined monsters before, but never like this. Not real. Breathing. Ancient creatures that seemed to move with purpose. Fear gnawed at her, but beneath it, a strange thrill blossomed. She was alive, she was free. And she was with Kale, the rogue alpha, who had risked everything to save her. They moved deeper into the forest, the trees growing taller, more twisted, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. The roar that had sounded distant before now vibrated through the ground, shaking roots and rattling stones. Alara felt it in her bones, a power that was older than her parents, older than the palace, older than anything she could imagine. Kale's pace quickened. "We need to find shelter," he said. "We can't face it in the open, not yet. There's a ruin nearby. Old, abandoned, protected by wards. It's our only chance to rest, to plan." Alara stumbled slightly, and Kale's hand closed around hers, steadying her. For a moment, their eyes met, and she saw something in him she hadn't noticed before. Vulnerability. The rogue alpha, feared across kingdoms, was not invincible. He carried his own weight, his own scars, his own fears. And yet he had chosen her. He had come for her, fought for her, and now he led her through the dark, unknown forest. The ruins emerged from the shadows like a dreamstone, walls overgrown with ivy, a collapsed roof that let in shafts of moonlight, and carved symbols that hummed faintly with protective magic. Kale guided Alara inside, shutting the heavy wooden doors behind them. The interior was cool, silent, but safe for now. Alara sank to the ground, her hands brushing the worn stone floor. I can feel it," she whispered. "The magic. The power. It's inside me. But I don't know how to control it." KL knelt beside her, his expression serious. "That's why they chained you. Not just to imprison you, but to contain you. Your magic is raw, unpredictable. It can protect you, but it can also destroy. You must learn to control it." She looked up at him, eyes wide, full of both fear and hope. "Can you teach me?" Kale's lips curved into a faint, almost shy smile. "I can show you. But it will not be easy. The power is tied to your emotions, your will, your fear, and your desire. You have to want it. You have to claim it." Alara nodded, determination settling in her chest. For the first time in her life, she felt capable, alive, and ready to fight for herself. Not just against her parents or their magic, but against the darkness that pursued her. They spent hours in the ruins, Kale guiding her through exercises to focus the magic that pulsed within her. At first, nothing happened. Her hands trembled, her heart raced, and frustration gnawed at her. But then, slowly, a spark ignited a small glow around her fingers. Soft at first, then brighter as her confidence grew. She felt a connection to the forest, to the air, to the very stones beneath her. The chains had not just bound her, they had awakened something inside her that was waiting for freedom. Kale watched her with intensity, a mixture of awe and something deeper, something unspoken, like a thread weaving them together. He knew this bond was dangerous, but he could not deny it. There was a pull between them, magnetic and undeniable, a connection forged in danger, in survival, in trust. Suddenly, a sound shattered the quiet, the rustle of leaves. A snap of a branch. Faint but deliberate. Both of them froze. The roar from the forest had returned. Closer now. More menacing. It was a creature of legend, the kind whispered about in fearful tales by old storytellers. Yet it was real, and it was hunting them. KL stood, placing himself between Alara and the ruin's entrance. "Stay behind me," he commanded, voice low but firm. "Whatever comes, I'll protect you." Alara obeyed, but she could feel the magic within her stirring, responding to the threat. She raised her hands instinctively, focusing, letting the energy flow through her. A shield of shimmering light flickered around them, pushing back the creeping darkness that pressed against the ruin's walls. The creature emerged from the trees, a massive form, shadowy and ethereal, with glowing eyes that pierced the night. Its roar shook the ground, rattling stones and sending birds screaming into the sky. Alara's chest tightened with fear, but Kale's presence anchored her, gave her strength. "Focus," he said, voice low, steady. "You can do this. Trust yourself. Trust the magic." She inhaled deeply, letting the fear sharpen her senses rather than paralyze her. The light around her hands expanded, enveloping them both. The creature hesitated, sensing the force it had not expected. A human, alive with ancient power, standing alongside the rogue alpha. KL moved forward, his blade flashing in the pale light, striking with precision, forcing the creature back. Alara followed instinctively, letting her magic flow, the energy weaving between them. Protecting, attacking, binding. They were a team, a unit born of fate, fighting side by side against a force that had seemed unstoppable. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The creature, the forest, the ruins, the night all held their breath. And then, with a final roar, it retreated into the shadows, leaving behind only echoes and the faint shimmer of its power lingering in the air. Alara sank to the ground, exhausted, trembling, but exhilarated. Kale knelt beside her, his hand brushing hers in a rare, gentle touch. "You did it," he said, voice low, almost a whisper. You really did it. Her heart raced, not from the fight, but from him, his nearness, the warmth of his hand, the intensity of his gaze. She realized something she could not ignore. The bond between them was stronger than fear, stronger than magic, stronger than the chains that had bound her for so long. Yet even as relief washed over her, a new fear stirred. The forest was silent now, but she could feel the lingering presence of the creature, and the knowledge that this was only the beginning. Her parents, their magic, and the forces aligned against her were still out there. Watching, waiting. Kale helped her to her feet, his grip firm and reassuring. We rest for a while, he said. Then we move. There's a place where we can be safer, where you can learn more, where you can become what you were meant to be. Elara nodded, feeling a spark of hope ignite. For the first time in her life, she felt capable, alive, and free, or at least closer to freedom than she had ever been. Yet the weight of the unknown pressed against her heart. What lay ahead was uncertain, dangerous, and full of challenges she could not yet imagine. As they settled within the ruins, the moonlight filtering through broken stone, Elara felt the magic within her pulse like a living thing. It was no longer a curse, no longer a chain, it was a part of her, wild and untamed, waiting for guidance, waiting for mastery. And Kale, dangerous and broken in his own way, was the only one who could help her understand it. Cliffhanger. But deep in the forest, beyond the reach of moonlight, something stirred, a force older than the palace, older than the chains, and far more dangerous than anything they had faced. It had sensed the awakening of her power, and it was coming for her. Soon, Elara and Kyle would have to face not just the world's darkness, but the shadow of destiny itself. The forest was silent, but not at peace. The air trembled with an energy so ancient it seemed to pulse through the roots, the stones, and even the very sky above. Elara stood at the edge of a clearing, her chest heaving, her hands glowing faintly with the magic that had grown within her over the past nights. Beside her, Kale's presence was steady, like a solid rock in a storm, his eyes scanning the darkness, alert, protective, unyielding. The roar they had heard before now came again, closer, resonating through the trees. It was more than a sound, it was a warning, a challenge, and a promise of danger. The creature that had pursued them was no longer merely a threat. It was an embodiment of the forces aligned against Elara, a living shadow drawn by the awakening power that pulsed in her veins. Kale placed a firm hand on her shoulder, grounding her. Remember, he said, voice low but commanding. This is your power. It's always been yours. Control it, or it will control you. I will fight with you, but you must lead. You are stronger than you think. Elara took a deep breath, closing her eyes. She let the forest speak to her, letting the pulse of the magic in the earth, the wind, and the remnants of the chains guide her. The glow around her hands expanded, then spread to her whole body, casting silver light across the clearing. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from determination. She would not be caged again. Not by chains, not by prophecy, not by anyone or anything. The shadow stepped into the clearing, massive and imposing. Its eyes glowed like molten gold, and its form seemed to shift, flicker, and twist like smoke caught in a storm. Yet it did not attack immediately, it circled, testing them, recognizing the surge of power within Elara. Kale tightened his grip on his blade, positioning himself between her and the creature, his muscles coiled, ready to strike. Elara felt her fear rise, but she pushed it aside, letting the magic flow naturally, instinctively. The light from her hands pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, a force that seemed alive, conscious, and connected to the forest itself. Slowly, deliberately, she raised her hands, and the light expanded outward, forming a barrier between them and the shadow. The creature recoiled slightly, hissing, its form wavering in response to the raw energy. You can do this, Kale murmured, his eyes locking with hers. I believe in you, always have. Elara's chest tightened at the words. Never had someone spoken to her with such certainty, such faith. It made her heart ache and bloom at once, a strange warmth in the cold night. She drew a deep breath and let herself feel the connection not just to the magic, but to Kale, to the world around her, and to the life she had been denied for so long. With a surge of energy, the light from her hands shot forward, striking the shadow. The creature shrieked, a sound that rattled the trees, and for a moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath, but instead of retreating, the shadow shifted, its form breaking into smaller, wisp-like shapes that danced around them, testing their defenses. Kale moved with lethal grace, striking at the smaller forms, his movements precise and powerful. Alara followed, guiding her magic, weaving it into a net of light that caught the shadow wisps, dissolving them into sparks that floated upward and vanished. Together, they were a force, balanced and unstoppable. The rogue alpha and the maiden no longer separate, but intertwined in purpose and power. The main form of the shadow recoiled again, now hesitant, sensing the bond and the strength between them. Alara stepped forward, letting the magic pulse through her entire body. "Leave us," she commanded, her voice clear, unwavering. "This ends now." The shadow paused, then advanced, slower this time, as if testing her resolve. Alara focused, feeling the chains that had once bound her pulse in her memory. They had been a cage, yes, but they had also awakened her. Their magic, once a curse, had become a key one she now wielded freely. The forest around her seemed to respond, the trees bending slightly, the wind carrying whispers of encouragement, and the ground glowing faintly beneath her feet. Kale moved beside her, placing a hand on hers, guiding her energy. "Together," he said. "Now." The light surged, brighter than before, forming a dome of shimmering energy that pushed the shadow backward. It roared, a sound that shook the clearing. But Alara did not falter. Her fear had transformed into determination, and determination had transformed into power. She had claimed her strength, embraced it, and made it her own. With one final push, the light exploded outward, scattering the shadow in a burst of brilliance. The forest seemed to sigh, the tension lifting as the darkness fled, broken and defeated. Alara's knees buckled, but Kale caught her, steadying her as she collapsed into his arms. For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of a night bird. Alara looked up at Kale, her chest still heaving, her hands glowing faintly with residual energy. "We did it," she whispered, disbelief and relief mixing in her voice. Kale smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen from him, one that softened the hard lines of his face. "Yes," he said, voice low and warm. "You did it. We did it together." Alara's heart swelled, a rush of emotion she could not name. She had been chained, imprisoned, feared, and controlled for so long. Yet here she was alive, free, powerful, and standing beside the man who had believed in her when no one else had. She realized, in that moment, that the bond between them was stronger than any magic, stronger than fear, stronger than destiny itself. Kale's hand lingered over hers. And for the first time, the danger felt distant, replaced by a quiet intimacy. "Alara," he said softly, "you're not alone anymore. Not now, not ever. I'll protect you, and you'll guide us, together." Tears pricked her eyes, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of triumph, of release, of a life finally reclaimed. I don't know what to say," she admitted. "Then say nothing," Kale replied, his gaze steady and unwavering. "Actions speak louder than words, and we have a lifetime to show each other what we mean." They stayed in the ruins through the night, tending to small wounds, resting, and speaking in quiet tones. Alara practiced her magic, learning to control it, to bend it to her will, rather than letting it act on instinct alone. Kale taught her not only to fight, but to trust herself, to believe in her strength, and to see herself as more than a victim of fate. The dawn began to break, pale and silver, filtering through the cracks in the stone roof. Alara stepped outside, feeling the first warm touch of sunlight on her face. It was a new day, a new life. The forest stretched out before her, vast and untamed, filled with endless possibilities. She turned to Kale, who was watching her with a mixture of admiration and something deeper, unspoken, that made her heart ache and flutter all at once. "I never imagined this," she said softly. "That I could feel this. Alive, free, strong." Kale moved closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You were always meant for more than chains," he said, "and I was always meant to find you. Fate, destiny, it has a way of working things out, even if it tests us first." Alara smiled, a true smile, unguarded and full of life. "Then let's not waste it," she said, her voice steady. "Let's face whatever comes next. Together." Kale nodded, his hand still resting gently on hers. "Together," he agreed. The forest around them seemed to sigh in approval, the wind carrying a whisper that promised new beginnings. The chains that had once bound her lay broken behind them, their magic now a part of her, a source of power and guidance rather than imprisonment. She had been freed, not only by Kale, but by her own courage, her own determination, and her willingness to embrace the destiny that had once terrified her. And as they stood there, side by side, the forest alive with the promise of life, magic, and possibility, Alara realized something she had never known before. Freedom was not just the absence of chains, it was the presence of choice, the courage to stand tall, and the strength to embrace life fully, with all its danger, beauty, and love. Kale's gaze softened, and he took her hand in both of his. "We'll face the world together," he said. "No matter what comes, no one will ever take you from me again." Alara felt her chest tighten with emotion. "And I'll face it with you," she said, voice resolute, eyes shining. "No matter what comes." The sun rose higher, casting light on the ruins, the forest, and the two of them. The shadows of the past, the chains, the prophecy, the fear were gone, replaced by a future full of strength, magic, and the unbreakable bond they had forged. Together, they had faced destiny, darkness, and danger, and emerged victorious, transformed, and bound not by chains, but by trust, courage, and love. The forest whispered their triumph, the wind carried their promise, and the world beyond waited, vast and unknown. But they were ready. Together,